You smile when you're breaking. You say, "I'm fine," even when your soul is starving. But have you ever asked, who am I without the mask? By the end of this video, you'll finally see the 5 false selves you've learned to wear and what they've quietly cost you. Fact 1, most people don't even know they're wearing one. Fact 2, the longer you wear it, the harder it becomes to take off, until the mask becomes the only face you remember. And here's the truth. You can't heal if you're hiding. They're always smiling, always agreeable, always ready to help, to adapt, to say yes. They're the friend who listens but rarely speaks, the coworker who never complains, the partner who says, "I just want you to be happy," even when their own needs go unmet. For years, this is the first mask, the pleaser. And at first glance, it looks like virtue, kindness, generosity, emotional maturity. But under the surface, something far more fragile is hiding, a soul that has never learned how to take up space. The pleaser isn't fake. They're not manipulative. They genuinely care. But they've learned, often from early childhood, that love is safest when it's earned. When you don't disrupt, when you don't ask for too much, when you're agreeable even at the cost of your truth. And so they vanish behind a smile, not because they want to lie, but because they're terrified of what might happen if they stop being nice. This is how the mask forms. A child who senses tension in the home begins to pacify. A daughter who sees her mother fall apart becomes her emotional caretaker. A boy who fears his father's rage becomes agreeable to survive. Over time, these responses get internalized, and by adulthood, they're no longer responses. They become identity. You're not pretending to be kind. You genuinely believe that your safety depends on it, and so the mask fuses to the skin. Carl Jung called this external identity the persona, the version of ourselves we wear to function in society. The persona isn't inherently wrong, it's necessary. But when we identify only with it, we lose access to our deeper self, the shadow, the instincts, the honest feelings we were taught to suppress. The pleaser lives entirely in the persona, and the cost is high. They may be liked by everyone, but known by no one. Here's the paradox. The more you hide your needs, the more disconnected you feel. And yet, the more disconnected you feel, the harder you try to please, hoping someone will sense what you don't say. But it doesn't work, because no one can meet the needs you never express. The mask keeps you socially safe, but emotionally starving. Signs you might be wearing the pleaser mask. You feel guilty when saying no. You overthink every text message trying to sound okay. You feel anxious when someone is upset, even if it has nothing to do with you. You avoid conflict at all costs, even if it means betraying yourself. You convince yourself it's kindness, but it's fear. Not fear of others, but fear that without this mask, you'll no longer be lovable. And here's the quiet tragedy. Pleasers often attract takers, people who are drawn to ease, to accommodation, to non-resistance. And over time, the pleaser becomes resentful, not because they were forced, but because their needs have gone unseen for so long, they begin to believe they don't even matter. They say things like, "I do so much for everyone. Why doesn't anyone check on me?" But they forget. They've trained the world to expect their silence, and now it feels too dangerous to break it. So what's behind the mask? Usually, anger, hurt, loneliness, a voice that has been silenced for so long it barely remembers how to speak without apology. And healing means letting that voice rise, slowly, gently, but truthfully. It means disappointing people. It means sitting in discomfort. It means letting someone else be upset and not rushing to fix it. You don't heal the pleaser mask by becoming cold. You heal it by becoming real. You learn to say, I'm not okay with that. I need time. That actually hurt me. Number. Without 10 layers of justification, you begin to prioritize truth over comfort. And something remarkable happens. People may pull away. Some will get uncomfortable. But the ones who stay, they'll meet the real you, the one who's been hiding behind kindness. The deepest fear of the pleaser is abandonment, but the deepest pain is self-abandonment. You can't keep disappearing to make others feel whole. You can't keep sacrificing your truth to keep the peace, because eventually the cost is your soul. Ask yourself, who am I when I'm not managing someone else's emotions? What do I want? Not what will make everyone happy, but what do I want? What would it mean to be fully honest and still loved? Because that's what the pleaser never learned, that love doesn't have to be earned, that your value doesn't come from being good, but from being whole. And you can't be whole while hiding half of yourself. Removing the mask will feel like betrayal. It will feel selfish. It will feel wrong. But it's not. It's the most honest thing you'll ever do. And the more you do it, the more you speak what's true, even when your voice shakes, the more you'll attract people who love you for your presence, not your performance. People who don't need you to please them, because they've done their own healing too. So to the one behind the mask, you are enough, not because you're useful, not because you're easy, but because you exist. You don't need to smile your way into love. You just need to show up as you are. They reject the rules, challenge every authority, laugh at tradition. They carve their own path, loudly, unapologetically. They say things like, I'm not like the others. I don't follow the system. I only answer to myself. At first, it feels like freedom, liberation, power. But stay close long enough, and you start to feel the weight behind the defiance. Because this isn't just rebellion. It's a mask. And like all masks, it hides a wound. This is the second face, the rebel, the one who defines themselves not by who they are, but by everything they're not. To understand the rebel, you have to understand betrayal. Most rebels were hurt young, but not in loud, obvious ways. Their pain came through being controlled, silenced, or dismissed. Their emotions were labeled dramatic. Their questions were met with punishment. Their curiosity was stifled by fear, so they learned, if I comply, I disappear. If I obey, I lose myself. And in that moment, rebellion became survival. The rebel isn't lying, their fire is real, their passion is authentic, but what they often can't see is that their identity has become a reaction, not a creation, not a choice, but a reflex to never be powerless again. Carl Jung might say the rebel is stuck in shadow projection, forever battling outer structures to avoid facing the inner prison. They call it freedom, but often it's just fear in reverse. Fear of being wrong, fear of being vulnerable, fear of being ordinary, and so they push and fight and distance. Not because they want to destroy, but because they've never known how to truly connect. The rebel's tragedy is this: in trying to be independent of everyone, they isolate themselves from everything. They avoid systems and lose support. They reject roles and lose belonging. They challenge intimacy and end up alone. Because you can't build connection on resistance alone. You have to stand for something, not just against everything. But the rebel rarely knows what they stand for. They've spent so long reacting, they forgot how to initiate. Signs you're wearing the rebel mask. You immediately distrust authority, even when it's fair. You sabotage opportunities just to feel in control. You reject labels, but secretly crave identity. You keep people at a distance, but feel starved for connection. You tell yourself you're independent, but you're exhausted from doing it all alone. This isn't freedom, it's exile. The rebel often romanticizes pain. They glorify being misunderstood. They build walls, then call them boundaries. They confuse self-sabotage with sovereignty. They say, "No one gets me," but refuse to let anyone in. Because to be seen is to be touched, and to be touched is to risk being hurt again. Here's the deeper truth. Most rebels are secretly desperate to rest, to soften, to be held, but they don't know how to surrender without feeling like they're dying. Because for them, surrender feels like erasure. So they keep fighting, not to win, but to survive. Healing the rebel mask doesn't mean becoming obedient. It means learning the difference between reaction and response. It means choosing your beliefs, not just opposing others. It means setting boundaries, not building walls. It means understanding that strength is not in isolation, but in integration. That the strongest trees aren't the ones that grow alone. They're the ones rooted in the forest, resilient because they're connected. Ask yourself, do I feel safest when no one can reach me? Do I push away structure even when it might help me grow? Do I reject things because they're wrong or because they remind me of someone who hurt me? Because rebellion born from pain isn't truth. It's trauma in motion. And healing begins when you stop fighting ghosts. You'll know you're healing when you stop needing to prove you're different. You stop rejecting good things just because they feel safe. You allow people to love you, even when it feels uncomfortable. You'll start to notice something new. Peace no longer feels like weakness. Structure no longer feels like a trap. And love, real love, no longer feels like control. It just feels human. The rebel doesn't need to surrender their fire. They just need to stop burning down everything that gets close. Because the point of rebellion isn't destruction, it's rebirth. And you can't be reborn until you let go of the fight and allow yourself to be seen. They're always there, holding space, holding hands, holding everyone else's world together. They know what you need before you ask. They give without being asked. They soothe, support, sacrifice. You'll hear things like, "I'm fine, don't worry about me. I just want to help. You need me more than I need rest." This is the third mask, the caretaker, the one who defines their worth by how much they give and who they can save. At first, it feels like grace, like strength, like unconditional love, but stay long enough and you'll notice the quiet fatigue, the sighs no one hears, the needs that never make it to the surface, the pain behind the smile. Because when you carry everyone else's burden, you forget how to feel your own weight. And over time, that forgetting becomes your identity. Caretakers are praised, admired, even canonized, but that's what makes the mask so hard to remove. Because when the world calls you selfless, you start to believe that having a self is selfish. So you keep pouring, even when you're empty. This mask often forms in early environments where a child had to grow up too soon. Maybe a parent was emotionally unavailable, so the child became their emotional regulator. Maybe chaos ruled the house, so the child became the peacemaker. And what was once survival becomes a pattern, a belief, a role. You are loved when you're useful. You are safe when others need you. You are worthy when someone else is broken, and you're the one who helps. But here's the quiet cost. You lose access to your own humanity. Your needs go unmet. Your feelings stay unspoken. Your desires feel like distractions. You've become so practiced in showing up for others that you've forgotten how to come home to yourself. Carl Jung wrote extensively about the danger of projecting the self outward. When we deny our own complexity, we often live it vicariously through others. Caretakers do this unconsciously. They ignore their inner wounds and focus entirely on healing someone else's, not out of malice, but because it's safer. It's easier to manage someone else's pain than to sit with your own. You'll know you're wearing the caretaker mask if you feel anxious when someone you love is in pain, even if you can't fix it. You feel guilty when resting. You resent others for not checking in but never ask for help yourself. You believe saying no is a form of abandonment. You give more than you receive in every relationship. Caretaking becomes a coping mechanism, a shield, a way to keep people close without ever being vulnerable, because if you're always helping, no one has to see you. But here's the truth. Love is not about becoming invisible. You don't have to disappear to be valued. You don't have to bleed to prove you're worthy. You don't have to hold everyone else together, especially if it's breaking you apart. Healing this mask means reclaiming your own needs without shame. It means saying, I can't right now. I need time. This isn't mine to carry. I'm struggling too. It means letting others feel discomfort without rushing in to fix it. And it means accepting that you deserve care, not just to give it, but to receive it. The deepest fear of the caretaker is being seen as selfish, but the deepest pain is never being seen at all. Ask yourself, who am I when I'm not useful to others? What do I need, not what others need from me, but I need? What would it feel like to be loved even when I have nothing to offer? Because real love doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to be messy, complicated, imperfect, present. You'll know you're healing when you let someone else take care of you without guilt. You say no and survive the silence that follows. You ask for help and don't apologize. You rest and don't justify it. The world may not applaud it, but your soul will. Because healing is not always loud. Sometimes it's in the quiet act of choosing yourself without asking for permission. You are not here to save everyone. You are here to live, to feel, to unfold. And in doing so, you give others the courage to do the same. That is your real gift. Not what you fix, but who you become when you stop hiding behind service and start living from truth. They shine, they impress, they enter the room like a wave of charm and confidence. They know how to make you laugh, how to say the right thing, how to leave a mark without ever becoming vulnerable. You admire them. You want to be around them. You might even fall in love with them. But after a while, you start to realize you don't actually know them, because behind the light, there's distance. Behind the mask, there's silence. This is the fourth mask, the performer, the one who hides their wounds behind charisma. At first, you might think, but they're so open, so expressive, so magnetic. But that's the brilliance of the performance. It draws you in while keeping you out. Because for the performer, attention is a shield. Praise is a buffer. Success is protection. The stage becomes safer than intimacy. Applause becomes louder than the inner voice. Where does this mask come from? Usually from a place where identity was earned, not discovered. Maybe they were the golden child growing up, the straight A student, the family's hope, the one who had to shine in order to matter. Or maybe they were ignored and had to become exceptional to be seen at all. Either way, they learned, if I keep performing, they'll keep loving me. And now they don't know how to stop. Carl Jung's idea of the persona is at the center of this mask. The performer has built their life on an image, and that image has become more real than the self beneath it. They're not lying. They're surviving. But the tragedy is this. The more they perfect the act, the more they lose touch with what's real. Signs you might be wearing the performer mask. You struggle to sit still in silence. You fear being seen as boring or average. You constantly feel the need to prove yourself, even in safe spaces. You overachieve not for joy, but to avoid irrelevance. You rarely show weakness. Even with people you trust, you live in performance mode. You polish every sentence. You tell stories that land. You present curated emotions. And deep down, you wonder, would anyone love me if I wasn't impressive? Here's the cost. You become adored, but not truly known. You gather praise, but not intimacy. People fall in love with your image, and you feel lonelier than ever because they love the costume, not the person wearing it. The performer avoids vulnerability by staying on stage. They stay busy. They stay bright. They stay loud because quiet feels dangerous. Stillness feels like disappearance. Honesty feels like exposure. But the soul doesn't thrive in applause. It thrives in presence, in authenticity, in being seen when you're not extraordinary. Healing this mask means learning how to be ordinary without shame. It means letting go of the need to impress. It means risking being overlooked to finally be real. It means realizing that the person who loves the mask can't possibly love you. Ask yourself, what would happen if I stopped trying to be enough? What if I showed up without preparation, without polish, without performance? Would I still matter to myself? Because until you believe you're worthy without the act, you'll keep attracting people who only stay for the show. And one day, the show will end, and the seats will be empty. And you'll realize you never let them see you. You'll know you're healing when you stop explaining your worth. You allow yourself to be quiet, slow, unimpressive, and still feel complete. You no longer chase applause, you seek connection. You can say, I don't know, without flinching. You stop scripting your life and start living it, not for the audience, but for the part of you that never got to be soft or lost or silent. The performer's fear is that without the mask, they'll be invisible. But the truth, without the mask, you finally become seen, not as a product, not as a role, but as a person. And that is the beginning of love. They're always positive, always composed, always morally correct, spiritually aligned, endlessly calm. They never raise their voice. They never show anger. They never break down, fall apart, or say something cruel. They seem elevated. But behind that purity, something vital is missing, the full range of their humanity. This is the fifth mask, the shadowless one. The person who hides their darkness so well, they start to believe it doesn't exist. At first, you might admire them, their peace, their control, their ability to rise above. They're the ones who don't hold grudges, who choose love over conflict, who let things go. But then something feels off, not dishonest, just incomplete. Because when someone is only light, you start to wonder where they buried the rest. According to Carl Jung, the shadow is everything in us that we repress, deny, or disown. Aggression, jealousy, fear, lust, grief, need. The shadowless one doesn't just hide these parts, they erase them. Not out of deception, but out of fear. Fear of being bad, fear of being rejected, fear of being like the people who once hurt them. So they become the opposite. They overcorrect, they purify, they perform morality. But in doing so, they become divided, a soul at war with itself. This is the spiritual mask, the moral mask, the good person mask. It often develops in those who were punished for expressing anger, or who were told that emotions are weak, ugly, or unbecoming. So they learned, if I want to be loved, I must be above all this. And now they don't even know what they feel, because they've trained themselves to feel only what's acceptable. You'll know you're wearing this mask if you can't stand being disliked. You hide your negative emotions under understanding. You often say, it's fine when it's not. You believe forgiveness is more important than processing pain. You rarely feel rage and judge those who do, but denying your shadow doesn't make it disappear. It makes it leak in sarcasm, in self-righteousness, in passive aggression, in chronic tension, and forced calm. Because what's unintegrated always finds a way out. This mask can be the hardest to let go, because it looks like healing, it sounds like wisdom, but it isn't wholeness, it's suppression. Real peace doesn't come from denying conflict, it comes from moving through it. Ask yourself, what emotions have I labeled as bad or unacceptable? Who taught me that being good meant being quiet, composed, or soft? What am I afraid would happen if I let my darker impulses speak? Because the goal is not to act out your shadow. It's to own it, to know your rage and not be consumed by it, to feel your jealousy and still choose truth, to touch your grief and stay open. You'll know you're healing when you allow yourself to be angry without guilt. You stop apologizing for being human. You speak the truth even when it's sharp. You feel pain and don't rush to cover it with light. You no longer seek to be good. You seek to be whole. You don't need to be pure. You need to be honest. You don't need to be liked. You need to be real. Because your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your depth. And the more you welcome it, the more truly alive you become. You've seen them now, the pleaser, the rebel, the caretaker, the performer, and the others you've met along the way, in lovers, in friends, in yourself. They were never bad. They were never evil. They were your armor, your survival, your way of saying, this world is too harsh for the real me, so let me become someone I know they'll accept. And it worked for a while. You avoided conflict. You earned approval. You made it through. But at what cost? The longer you wear the mask, the harder it becomes to take it off. Until one day, you forget you're wearing one at all. You wake up feeling tired, disconnected, half alive, and you can't figure out why. But deep down, you know, you're not tired from doing too much. You're tired from being someone you're not. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not the version they taught you to be, not the polished image you built to feel safe, but the person underneath. Messy, raw, contradictory, human. Your soul doesn't want perfection. It wants presence. It wants you, not your performance. You don't have to rip the masks off all at once. They protected you after all. But you can begin with one moment of honesty, one boundary, one breath where you don't perform, don't please, don't fix. You just are. And in that moment, your soul exhales because you're finally home.